Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to wait just a minute or two for folks to join us, if that's okay. And then we'll go ahead and get started. But welcome. Thank you all for being here. All right. Unless there are any objections, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Great. So, welcome everyone for joining us for this, our final brown bag of the semester. Um, we're very excited to have you all here and to share some of the work that goes on kind of behind the scenes here at the center. Um, this brown bag is set up as a show and tell, so folks from across the center are going to share some of the items that they have encountered in their work and what they find interesting about them and how we've used them. But to start us off, oh, I should also introduce myself. Apologies. My name's Jill Found. I'm the Assistant Director for History, Research, and Education here at the Civil Rights Center. But our first presenter is going to be Dr. Bobby Donaldson, the Executive Director. Dr. Donaldson,
Thank you very much. Dr. Joe, can you hear me okay?
you're good.
Well, I want to welcome everyone to today's last brown bag session for the spring semester. And I want to begin by thanking Dr. Jill Found and the team for orchestrating today's event. I'm extremely excited, and the team will tell you that I have a lot that I want to say about today's event, but I will discipline myself and set the stage for our colleagues. This is very exciting for me, having been on the faculty of our university for 27 years, and this year is the 10th anniversary of the Center for Civil Rights History and Research. And so what we want to talk about today is the great work that has been done over really decades to preserve African American and civil rights history on our campus and to highlight the collections and the individuals who make that possible. On the screen is a photograph that was taken of me. It was requested by our communications team. They wanted to showcase me in my place of work. They staged this photograph. I like the picture, but it is deceptive. This photograph captures just one angle, one perspective of what we do at the center that many may see in our newsletters. You may see it on our social media. You may even see it at some of our programs. But today, as Dr. Jill mentioned, we want to talk about what happens on a daily basis that is never in the headlines and is behind the scenes. So, Dr. Jill, if you go to the next slide, this is in some ways who we are. This is the organized or unorganized chaos of the Civil Rights Center, of my own office. Some of those pictures you see on the screen are from just last week, where others in our team were trying to help me sort through things in my office. What this is a different angle of what we do at the center. The work of daily working to identify, to preserve, to catalog, and to digitize materials that come from many different directions. And so today we'll talk about archives. And what does that mean in the terms of the work we do? We're talking about photographs, letters, newspapers, sermons, diaries, sometimes moving footage that many people have sorted out in their basements, in their attics, in their closets, and we come along and try to make sense of that material. And so what we'll talk about today is not only the collections, but for me, which is very important, are the individuals, the members of our team, those at our university, those in our community who are actively working to document this history. The next slide. So we take all of this stuff from various individuals and we sometimes rescue it. So on the screen, you'll see some images taken during COVID where we were called to a site and we were told that if we were not there in 24 hours, the materials would be lost. That the sanitation crew was coming in and they were going to discard everything to surplus or to recycling. So we came in dressed in our outfits and we came in and we rescued what looked like a mess to some people. It looked like stuff scattered in many different directions. And the team came in, pulled those items, and some of those items you'll be hearing about today. You will be hearing about records of organizations, records of individuals that have been rescued, reviewed, described, and cataloged by members of our team. The next slide. Some of those images and some of those materials are rescued. People may not know their value or know their significance, but they know they want someone to review them. And so that's part of the role we play. And then there are collections where people clearly know the value. They know the significance, and they work to bring those materials to our campus. And one of the very first collections that we worked on as a center included the records of Congressman James Clyburn. In many ways, the center's growth is rooted in Congressman Clyburn's advocacy and Congressman Clyburn's papers. Congressman Clyburn said he had some materials that he wanted us to come visit at one of his residences and also at his office in Washington, D.C., not fully knowing what that would be. And today, the current collection of Jim Clyburn is 320 boxes of materials. And Mike Berry and our political collections is stewarding that effort. It's one of our largest collections. But Jim Clyburn is just one of many collections that we have at the University of South Carolina. The next slide. One of the important aspects as we talk about archives is to talk about those men and women who have worked with us for years as community archivists and community historians to help us build relationships and to also help us to connect with individuals. One of those persons who was very instrumental in the work of the Civil Rights Center was Tom Johnson. Dr. Tom Johnson was the field archivist of the South Carolina Library. He was also the assistant director. Over the years, he brought in some very notable collections, many of which are now digitized, including the papers of Reverend Ida Quincy Newman, the papers of civil rights giant Majeska Monteith Simpkins, the papers of the South Carolina Council on Human Relations, the papers of Reverend Joseph A. Delane, Briggs v. Elliott of Somerton, South Carolina, and also the photographs of Richard Samuel Roberts, which you'll hear about today. The work that we've done at the center has also been enabled by other community historians, including Mrs. Fannie Phelps Adams, a Booker T. Washington class of 1934, who opened the door for research we're currently doing on the Wheeler Hill community. Other community historians included Agnes Harris Perez and Miss Maddie Johnson Roberson, two graduates of Booker T. Washington who were very active in the Ward 1 community. And you'll be hearing about Ward 1 today. Another individual who was very instrumental was the Reverend A.C. Red, who was from the Waverly community, a graduate of BTW, class of 1935, who provided a great deal of consultation to the center that you'll hear about today. And the final person is Ms. Donella Brown Wilson, who was originally from the Ward 1 community, who moved to Waverly, who went to the Booker T. Washington School in the 1920s. And the next slide. When we conducted an interview with Ms. Wilson, she gave us a quote that we now use in all of our marketing and all of our outreach. And she told us that history has no purpose unless you use it. So that is a quote from an oral interview that we conducted with Ms. Wilson 15 years or so ago. So what does that now mean in the work of the center over the last decade? What does it mean today? And what does it mean going forward? The next slide. And so we use these collections in multiple ways. Of course, they're on exhibit, but these collections help to promote in our education and outreach efforts. These collections are instrumental in research and scholarship, research with scholars from around the country, research with current students and faculty at the University of South Carolina, also research of postdoctoral fellows, three of which are with us this year at the university. And also, it's very instrumental with programming and outreach, including walking tours, including exhibitions, and the like. The next slide. It is true that without the rich archival collection, much of the programming that we now do at the center would not be as strong and robust as it is. In the middle image is a photograph of Reverend Jesse Jackson, who made a surprise visit to our campus during an exhibit we had called Justice for All. And knowing he was on his way to campus, we quickly consulted many archival collections in South Carolina, in our political collections, in the moving image collection, and we assembled very quickly an exhibit featuring Reverend Jesse Jackson. And he was taken away by it, but that would not have been possible if some others had not saved and preserved these collections. The next slide. So again, I want to emphasize a theme that hopefully is well appreciated. These collections are made possible by community activists and historians. They're made possible by the extraordinary team of archivists we have across our university. And they're also made possible by the team. And this is some of the team you see working, often in ways many people don't even realize that we're doing. We're in attics, we're in basements, we're in storage units. And some members of our team who are with us today may even not even realize these images were taken, where we are digging through boxes hoping to recover valuable material that will be useful for teaching and research. The next slide. And here you have individuals. In the middle is Agnes Harris Perez, who brought brown paper bags to my office one day and sat down with me to review this material. On the left is Dr. Bernie Gallman, who wanted to review materials from the Palmetto Medical Association. And on the bottom right are photographs of individuals at the St. Martin de Porres Church who brought us in to review their collections. And many of those collections are now being processed at the university. Next slide. Earlier, I mentioned Mr. A.C. Red, Reverend A.C. Red. One day, Mr. Red was on our campus visiting in a class, and he wanted us to see a photograph, the one you see on the left. It is a photograph of A.C. Red taken as a little boy in Columbia in the 1920s. And he wanted me to know about our photographer in Columbia. And he asked me that I know anything about Richard Samuel Roberts. And I said, actually, Reverend Red, I do. The next slide, Dr. Jill. In 1987, my great-grandfather, who lived in Aiken, South Carolina, turned 90 years old. And my aunt, who was a librarian at USC Aiken, gifted my grandfather a copy of a book called A True Likeness. And for his 90th birthday, he and his sister, Aunt Baby, her name was Fanny, were flipping through this book. And here I am, high school, remembering this moment. And Aunt Baby saw a picture of a little boy in a bowl, and she wanted to know who he was. She and Granddaddy saw a picture of a little boy holding a chicken on the front cover, and she too wanted to know, who are these people? Well, little did I know, 30 plus years later, I would help my team to answer those questions. Who are these people? Who is the little boy? His name is Walter Adams. Walter Adams from Ward 1. Walter Adams, whose story is now reflected in the intersection exhibit at the Columbia Museum of Art. And so these collections are regularly enabling us to answer questions, to close gaps, to solve mysteries. But none of that would have been possible if individuals and organizations had not saved their materials and then made a conscious effort to have them archived and deposited. And last slide for me. So who is behind the scenes working on these collections? Who is processing these items? And what are they discovering through the course of that active cataloging. That is what we will talk about today and feature members of our team who are doing that work on a regular basis. So Dr. Jill, I'll stop now so we can hear from our team members.
Thank you, Dr. Donaldson. So our first presenter today is going to be Angelica Williams, who is a graduate assistant with the Civil Rights Center. Go ahead, Angelica.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to be meeting with you all, and thank you for this opportunity to share about some of the work that I've been doing since I've been at the Civil Rights Center. Today, I'm going to share about some of the items that I found on one of my favorite collections that I've worked with since being at the center. So one of my favorite collections is called the Kershaw Collection, and it contains items related to the lives and legacies of Wilhelmina Kershaw, who was a well-known teacher and administrator at C.A. Johnson High School, and her daughter, Dr. Linda Kershaw, who was both a musician and music director at Benedict College, as well as some other institutions throughout the state. In this collection, there are 11 boxes of personal letters, photographs, yearbooks, church programs, awards, and more that help tell the story of the impressive impact that the Kershaw women had on those around them. And as they kept documents related to their own lives, they also preserved the records of other people and organizations. For one, the Kershaw Collection has allowed us to learn more about the growth and development of Columbia's historically Black high school, one of them, C.A. Johnson High School. The collection also provides insight into historically Black churches like Second Calvary Baptist Church, and also the documents related to Wilhelmina Kershaw's life give insight into what it was like to grow up as a Black woman during the height of segregation in the South. Finally, this collection also reflects how powerful it is to have access to education for yourself and to use that knowledge to bring others along with you. And so now the Civil Rights Center has the honor of protecting the records that the Kershaw women kept so diligently throughout their lives, and use them to continue to teach others, just as they did with their own careers. And so today I'll be telling you about two people from C.A. Johnson High School who were documented in the Kershaw Collection. Next slide, please. So here I've chosen two documents related to the teaching legacy of Mrs. Margaret Thornton. Thornton was one of the first music teachers at C.A. Johnson High School and worked in Richland County District 1 as a music instructor for over 60 years, teaching at both the secondary school level and also at the college level, as well as offering private music lessons. Mrs. Thornton was the first African American inducted into the South Carolina Music Education Hall of Fame and received countless other awards for her teaching. During her teaching career, she inspired countless students, and the documents here today reflect the deep connection she formed with those she taught. So these documents are specifically related to Mrs. Thornton and her mentorship of a bass singer named Louis Edward Smart, who was one of her students at C.A. Johnson High School in 1950. Edward Smart went on to perform all around the world before coming back to give a concert in Columbia, South Carolina, which is what you can see from this article here on the left. His numerous letters contained in this collection to Mrs. Thornton demonstrate that she had a profound impact on the trajectory of his life, and that C.A. Johnson played a key role in preparing him for his successful career. So as mentioned, Louis Edward Smart was a native of Columbia, South Carolina, who graduated in 1950. And following his graduation, he went on to study at the University of Washington and the Royal Conservatory of Music in Toronto, before he eventually began performing in countries all throughout Europe. Those countries included Belgium, Switzerland, Italy, and Germany. And one of the other articles that isn't featured here, but that I came across in the collection mentions the reason why Smart went abroad to perform, and it was largely because there weren't a lot of roles open for Black classical performers at that time in the United States, but there were many other opportunities in Europe, and so he went abroad to take advantage of those. And in the numerous letters written to Mrs. Thornton, he also details performances he gave, some at home, like New York and the Netherlands, specifically during his time as a performer on a luxury cruise liner. But during all of these travels, he always continued to stay in contact with Mrs. Margaret Thornton. And through the numerous letters, postcards, news clippings, and photographs that he sent her, you can see the influence that she had on his career. So strong was their connection that even 15 years after his graduation, Mrs. Thornton organized a program so that Smart could return to C.A. Johnson for his alma mater and sing to the city of Columbia in 1966. And so again, this news article to the left is announcing that performance, and the letter to the right is Louis Edward Smart expressing his interest in returning. He agreed to do the performance. Just splitting half of the proceeds of whatever came in from selling the tickets, and didn't require them to pay any other expenses for his performance, because he just wanted to come back and do that for the city, the school, and Mrs. Thornton. So next slide, please. Sorry. So although I could continue to go on about all of the items that I found in this collection, I've read through much of the letters, looked through all the photographs, and really enjoyed my time getting to know so much about the Kershaw women and their friends and their family. But instead, I'll turn to talking about some of the uses that have come from that collection. So it's been a very rich resource for research. The Kershaw Collection has provided vital information on a number of topics related to Black life, history, and culture in Columbia. In addition to providing insight on accomplished professionals like Louis Smart and Mrs. Margaret Thornton, the collection also contains a vast amount of information on the influence of Black schools on education in the 20th century, Black education in the South more broadly, and the legacies of Black women in education. As a result, this collection has played a pivotal role in supporting academic research through providing content for student presentations, posters, and fueling efforts to create a historical marker for C.A. Johnson High School. Finally, with all the information that you're seeing displayed here today, you may wonder how you can access these documents for yourself. Currently, the collection isn't available digitally, but it is in line to be fully made available in person through the South Carolina Library once it's fully processed and has a finding aid associated with it. At the end of this presentation, I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have about this collection or other collections that we processed. But for now, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Julia. Thank you.
Thank you, Angelica. And as Angelica mentioned, we will take questions at the end of all of the presentations today. So if you have questions for Angelica, please write them down so you don't forget them. But I'll pass it over to Julio, who is a research assistant with the center and worked with us as an undergraduate student.
So hello everyone. So my name is Julio and I'm a research assistant here at the Center for Civil Rights. And today I'll be talking about Dr. Harry Wright's collection and just highlighting some interesting things that I found throughout his working with his collection. Next slide, please. So to kind of start off, I want to talk about Dr. Harry Wright, who he was. So he was an undergraduate student here at the University of South Carolina. And so he was a student during the late 1960s, early 1970s, and he helped found the Association of African American Students, now known as AAAS, in 1968, and then also worked to help create and establish the African American Studies program here at USC in 1971. And so after his time at USC, he attended Brown University and the University of Pennsylvania, where he earned his MD. And then he would go on to become a researcher and doctor working with young children with autism. And then in 1980, he will come back to USC as a professor at the School of Medicine in the Department of Neuropsychiatry and Behavioral Sciences. And so his collection that we have about 40 boxes of Dr. Harry Wright materials. So his collection reflects his lifelong journey as a student, both at USC and his other graduate schools that he attended, but also his time as a doctor and researcher, and then as an alumni of the University of South Carolina. And so these images here, they're all come straight from his collection. The first image is a newspaper clipping of him featured in the Gamecock newspaper, the student newspaper here at USC. And then these two other images are just during his time as a when he was a doctor. Next slide, please. So now I want to specifically talk about the Metropolitan Education Foundation. So in Dr. Harry Wright's collection, he saved a lot of things. He saved a lot of newspaper clippings, a lot of important documents related to the university and organizations that he was involved. And so one of those organizations that he was involved was the Metropolitan Education Foundation. And so the MEF, also known as the MEF, was established on April of 1968. And it was established as a result of the racial tensions that, to ease racial tensions in the city of Columbia after the Orange Massacre and the killing of Dr. Martin Luther King. And so this organization was created by both students and faculty at the university, but also with partnerships with different businesses and leaders in the city of Columbia. And so the MEF had various initiatives. It was geared towards to helping Columbia's poor neighborhoods. And so they had 6 different initiatives, which I kind of want to talk about quickly. So the first initiative was Operation Technique, which was a program to help students gain testing strategies, so to help them perform with standardized testing better. And then Operation Expansion, which helped students, primarily those who came from predominantly Black high schools, to help them transition into colleges and universities that were often white. The other one is day camps and teen clubs, which offer recreational and educational activities for students. And in those initiatives, they also provided different history and African American studies classes for those students as well. And then the Higher Teen program, which helped a lot of youth during that time, help them gain jobs throughout the city of Columbia. And so then on this slide is just the first brochure or pamphlet of the MEF, and just kind of talked about its goals, its mission, and how people can donate and support the initiatives of the MEF. Next slide, please. And so this slide here is just kind of talking about some of the new a student who was a member of MEF and volunteer, and his name was Louis James. He's pictured right here on the left side of the screen. But yeah, so Dr. Harry Wright saved a lot of these newspaper clippings, which again helps us to understand how the organization was created, and then also just seeing the community's reactions to the establishment of the MEF during this time. Next slide, please. Okay, so then later on, the MEF was established in May or April of 1968. And so later on in May of 1968, the MEF will go on to host a benefit concert to help them raise money and funds so they can provide enough support for all of the initiatives that they had. And so for that reason, they hosted this benefit concert. And so they were able to get James Brown as the headliner of this benefit concert, which I thought that was really cool to see. And so here you can see a flyer talking about the concert and what it was. And then on the next slide, next slide, please. Oh, yeah. And then on the next slide is a newspaper clipping on the left side of James Brown and his why he agreed to do the benefit concert for the MEF, and just talking about his reasonings of why he supports the Metropolitan Education Foundation. And then on the right side is just an autograph that James Brown gave to Harry Wright during that time, and then also a ticket to the concert as well. So all of this again comes from Dr. Harry Wright's collection, and it just shows us a short history of what of his time as a student at the University of South Carolina. So next slide, please. But yeah, like the clippings and the everything that he said regarding the Metropolitan Education Foundation has been really helpful in our research with Black and Garnet, documenting the history of African Americans at USC from the 1960s to the 1980s, and has been, again, instrumental in many other ways. Dr. Harry Wright's collection also has stuff regarding the founding of the African American Studies program, also related to documents related to AAAS. So it has been really helpful in helping us understand what life was like back then. But also it has helped us. He had a lot of materials related to health, and so that has helped us with our health rights and resistance exhibit that we currently have in the Hollings Library. And then his papers has also helped me with my own personal research regarding Black rap and student publications. But yeah, brings us to the conclusion of my presentation. And thank you guys for listening.
Thank you, Julio. And I wanted to point out that one of the documents Julio had in his presentation is here on this slide at the very bottom of the picture. The blue one was that MEF brochure. So some of the documents that we're showing we've had on display in other situations, and we use them very actively. All right. Next is going to be Megan Strother, who is also a research assistant with us at the center.
Hi, my name is Megan Strother, and in my presentation today, I'll be examining student publications, including the Garnet and Black yearbooks that we see on this screen now on the side, and the Gamecock newspaper to trace how Black Week was represented and remembered at the University of South Carolina. These archival sources form like the basis of my research for the Black and Garnet exhibit that we had in Thomas Cooper this February. Next slide, please. Okay, so the beginnings of Black Week. Black Week was first held in October of 1968. It was a student-driven initiative that brought Black leaders, scholars, artists, and activists to the University of South Carolina at a time when the university had only recently desegregated. The week created space for Black intellectual life, cultural celebration, and cultural unity on a campus that had historically excluded it. Much of what I learned came from materials accessed online, and also this particular document is from Harry Wright's collection. It's a piece from another student publication called Black Rap, another form of where Black students could inform each other about like social issues. On the bottom of this document, it says 500 Black babies die per year from malnutrition in Birmingham, Alabama. So it was like world issues and also what's going on in USC, Columbia, and any other like job opportunities or like events for Black students to go to. And on the side of this slide, is a schedule of events for Black Week. So you can see the different number or different names that were invited to speak in different topics, such as like Black religion and education. Next slide, please. So in the Gamecock newspaper clippings, I found firsthand accounts from Black students describing their experiences during Black Week. One student wrote that they could imagine a future where Black Week might no longer be necessary, but at that time, it absolutely was. They emphasized that Black culture had been downplayed in history, and Black Week helped correct that erasure. So, like I said, Black Week consisted of speakers, plays, talent shows, and even crownings. One play I wanted to highlight today is the Requiem for Brother X. The play follows a Black man living in what he calls a sick society. He wants to embrace his Black identity fully, but he is constantly pressured and worn down by the expectations of white society. It was a powerful reflection of the emotional and psychological struggles Black students were navigating during that era. And in this slide, I have like different pictures from Black Week that I like found in the yearbook. So the first one to the left, it's like a political debate of different political candidates. The talent shows on the left, newspaper clipping about the Association of African American Students. On the third picture is Miss USC speaking at the Black Week events. And then the last picture, two prominent people or leaders, Julian Bond and Nikki Giovanni. Next slide, please. Ultimately, Black Week created a space for Black students to come together, build community, and celebrate their identity at a predominantly white institution. It laid the groundwork for the cultural programming, student organizations, and community spaces we see today. Next slide, please. So this is the like a brief picture of the exhibit that we had in February in Thomas Cooper, and you can see some of the pictures of Black Week and like Black students unifying. I enjoyed this project because I didn't know much about it. I didn't go to USC, so it was really cool to learn about.
Thank you, Megan. All right. Our next person who's going to speak is Rachel Young, who is a public historian here at the center, who's going to speak about the Richard Samuel Roberts collection and some of the extensive work that's been done with that.
Yeah, hi, I am Rachel Young, and I am going to be talking a bit about Richard Samuel Roberts photography and the ways that we get to see a different view of some of the African American neighborhoods in Columbia through his pictures than we might otherwise. Next slide, please. So Richard Samuel Roberts was born in Fernandina, Florida in 1880 and moved to Columbia in 1920 with his wife and kids. He was a postal worker and a photographer. In Columbia, he lived on 1717 Wayne Street, which is about where the 2 is on that map, the little dot with the 2, in an area that Tanya Anderson referred to as Little Harlem, also in the Arsenal Hill area of Columbia. That area also had the majority, or a lot of the Washington Street Black Business District, and also in that area were a number of middle-class homes. Most of Robert's photography was based around portraits, but he also photographed schools, businesses, and a lot of the places that and homes, and a lot of the places that he photographed are no longer there. The photographs that he took of businesses and homes show a lot of the African American neighborhoods and communities in Columbia, including the Arsenal Hill or Little Harlem area, the Waverly area, Ward 1, and Wheeler Hill. These were very vibrant communities that had a lot of different things, including schools, businesses, churches, and more. A lot of the information that is more easily accessible about these areas comes from, and pictures come from things related to redlining and urban renewal, like the Homeowners Loan Corporation report from 1937, which is the map here you see in the background, or collections like the Joseph Winter Photograph Collection. So the pictures that Roberts took can help give a broader view and show a lot more of what these communities looked like and what life might have been like. So I want to give a little bit of background just about what the HOLC report was. So it was based on a map done in 1927, and then the survey and report were done in 1937. This map was used for redlining. For anyone who might not be familiar with that, it's basically the systemic denial of insurance, mortgages, and loans that contributed to residential segregation and decreased rates of home ownership among minorities, especially African Americans. This map, the Homeowners Loan Corporation graded areas from A at the best to D at hazardous. And in Columbia, as across the country, most majority Black areas received a D grade. Columbia is not an exception. And quickly, before I talk more about Robert's pictures, I want to kind of discuss what that meant. So on average, these areas that were graded with a D had lower income and lower rates of home ownership. One of the things that the report listed as a detrimental factor was a mixture of grades of population and a clash of social classes. So basically diversity. These areas that are in red Those are the degraded areas. They also tended to have unpaved or poorly maintained roads, heavy traffic, little public infrastructure, and little connections to utilities like telephones, gas, electric, and sewer. A lot of the homes were described as being dilapidated. One of the other things that was in these descriptions were, it says a low-grade class of tenants in majority of area accentuates unsanitary living conditions. This is immediately before a description that says that these areas had a dearth of storm sewers and also described environmental pollution, including obnoxious odors from a fertilizer plant, city garbage dump, railroad yards, and encroachment of industrial properties. So instead of making the connection of maybe these environmental issues are part of the problem, they blamed it on the people who lived in the areas. But these descriptions don't give us the full picture of what these neighborhoods and communities looked like. They were still vibrant and bustling communities. And Robert's pictures, which were taken around the same time as these surveys were being done, because he was taking pictures in Columbia from 1920 to 1936, they really contrast with these descriptions that we get. Next slide. So the first one I wanted to talk about is these pictures from the Arsenal Hill area. Areas, the little dots on the map say 1, 2, 3, and 4. The first one is 1716 Williams Street. That is the location of the New Howard School, which was one of the several schools for African Americans in Columbia. And what you see in the picture is the playground there that was very much fundraised for by members of the community. Number 2 is the home of the Manigault family at 1703 Wayne Street. They were undertakers, embalmers, and funeral directors, and neighbors to Richard Samuel Roberts, and is an example of some of the middle class housing and neighborhoods that were in that area. We also have a couple of businesses. Numbers 3 and 4 showcase 3 is Simon's Garage, which was an a car repair shop and a blacksmith shop that operated at 928 Washington Street for many years, and that building is still standing. Then number 4 is the 1100 block of Washington Street. It has numerous businesses there. You had real estate offices, doctor's offices, restaurants, and a Knights of Pythias Hall. Next slide. So the next slide is the Waverly area, which is this area that is marked as D3 on the HOLC report. This was an area where, again, there were a lot of middle-class homes. There were also some working-class homes as well. You had a lot of businesses. You had Benedict College and Allen University. You had multiple hospitals for African Americans. So this area had a lot of resources and was it's been described as being a very self-sufficient area. It had, according to the HOLC report, several blocks in this area were among the best property owned by African Americans in Columbia. There were also some white families living in that area. But they also said that the influence and effects have been disregarded in the above figures. So that's referring to the report, giving it a D grade since it's a minority influence. But what we can see is that there were a lot of middle-class people and businesses, and even in areas that were working class instead of middle class, there was still a very vibrant and deeply connected community. We have the houses that I wanted to highlight were 900 Hardin Street, which is the home of Dennis Jackson. He had a grocery store on his property that served a lot of different people. Number 10, we have 1329 Pine Street, which is the home of Dr. Benjamin A. Everett. He had his doctor's office behind his home. At 2202 Hampton Street, we had Waverly Hospital and Nurse Training School. In this picture, you can see some of the nurses, as well as Dr. Norman A. Jenkins, who was one of the people who ran that hospital and trained some of the nurses. And then number 12 we have the Griffin Memorial Building and the home of Dr. Matilda Evans. The Griffin Memorial Building had numerous businesses that operated out of it, as well as a veterans center. Dr. Matilda Evans operated hospitals, trained nurses, and also ran a health clinic. Next slide. So Ward 1 and Wheeler Hill were two very, Ward 1 was a large community, and then Wheeler Hill was somewhat smaller. In these areas, you all again had many businesses, churches, and homes. So I just want to highlight a couple of those. So the first one, number 5, is 1027 College Street. This is the home of Melinda Baker. Her daughter, Geneva Baker Lewis, moved back in with her as an adult and brought her children. Geneva Lewis was an educator and a seamstress, and she worked for the Works Progress Administration, teaching adult classes. Number 6 is 713 Main Street, which was J.W. Brunson's tailor shop. He had this location for many years where he cleaned clothes, did tailoring, and other things related to clothes. Number 7 is 1016 Divine Street, which was Union Baptist Church. That picture specifically is from the funeral of S.E. Mitchell Hopkins in February of 1930. It was one of the many churches in that area. And then number 8 is Booker T. Washington High School. Today, we label as 1400 Wheat Street. In a lot of the descriptions that were contemporary, it was described as being on Marion Street between Wheat and Blossom Street. For many years, this was the only accredited high school for Black students in the state of South Carolina. So despite the way that a lot of these areas in Columbia were graded, there's a whole lot more to the story. A lot of these African-American neighborhoods lacked a lot of resources and lacked a lot of access to resources and infrastructure, but it doesn't tell the whole story. These photographs by Richard Samuel Roberts, who advertised that he could make people beautiful even if they weren't, show us a very different picture of these neighborhoods and communities. We can see very vibrant communities of people striving for better lives for themselves and their children. We can see the homes where future civil rights leaders grew up. We can see businesses that supported people, and the churches and schools that in many ways were hearts and souls of these communities. So thank you for allowing me to share these pictures with you guys.
Thank you, Rachel. And I want to say 2 things briefly about the Roberts photos. One is that they are in the process of being digitized and will be fully available online in the coming months. But the second is just to give props to Rachel where they are due, which is to say that a number of these pictures either had easy identifications or had been previously identified. So on this page, for example, the Brunson Taylor Shop and Booker T. Washington High School were sort of obvious identifications, whereas the other 2 are ones that Rachel spent a great deal of time looking at the photographs, comparing them to maps, comparing them to newspapers, comparing them to contemporary homes to determine what the actual address of those houses was. So Rachel is giving us a lot of the sort of big picture of this, but a lot of detailed, intricate work went into identifying where these pictures were actually taken. So I just wanted to share that too. And I'm going to be our last person today to speak. Originally, Chris Freer, who is our lead researcher and writer, was going to talk about this artifact in this collection, but he's unfortunately ill today. So I'm going to step in and talk a little bit about one of my favorite collections that we work with and one of my favorite items in that collection. So the South Carolina Council on Human Relations papers is held at the South Caroliniana Library. And as Dr. Donaldson mentioned, it's one of the collections that was brought in with the help of Tom Johnson and has been at this university for decades now. It is a very, very large collection. And most of it is administrative papers. So kind of the stuff you see on the screen here, letters, meeting minutes. But then occasionally there are really exciting things like this flyer supporting downtown boycotts. And so, in preparation for the Justice for All exhibit, which opened in February of 2019, uh, the team at the time spent a long time, or most of the fall of 2018, in the archives looking through these collections. And the South Carolina Council on Human Relations was one that took up a great deal of that time. And one of the exciting things that we found in that collection was a letter. And this was a letter from a man named Thomas Gaither, and he wrote it when he was in the York County Prison Farm in February of 1961. And to sort of give you the experience of going through this collection, right, most of it is, like I said on this previous slide, um, letters, typed letters, meeting minutes, kind of everyday things. So when you come across a handwritten letter, it stands out. And this one stood out especially because it was written from the York County Prison. And as you'll see at the bottom, the person who brought it in wrote core because Thomas Gaither was a core leader already at the age of 22. Um, Gaither had attended Claflin and been active in the Orangeburg movement there in 1960. And by 1961, he was working with CORE and was a part of what is often called the Friendship Nine. These were mostly students plus Gaither, who were arrested in Rock Hill. Most of them attended Friendship Junior College, thus the Friendship Nine. And they were arrested in Rock Hill as part of a sit-in. This, by um, February of 1961, is happening across the South, across the state. But what really makes the Friendship Nine unique is that they refuse bail and they undertake what's called the jail no bail strategy. And the idea behind it is to really show the willingness of these participants to suffer for their beliefs, for this cause, and to hopefully, if possible, fill up jails when needed, but also to put a strain on the jails themselves. So in this letter that Gaither writes to Alice Spearman, who was the head of the South Carolina Council on Human Relations, he talks about um, his perspective on the sit-ins, why they're happening, and also what life in jail is like for him and his um, fellow demonstrators. He's responding. This is him and the rest of the Friendship Nine. And he's responding to a letter by Alice Spearman, which is also in the South Carolina Council on Human Relations collection. So she sends him a letter saying, is there anything we can do for you? How can we help? And he responds. This letter featured in the Justice for All exhibit and also helped us put together the Justice for All digital exhibit, which you can now go see, which includes a profile of Thomas Gaither as one of the people highlighted on the website. This piece also was a central component of a project that Dr. Donaldson and Chris Freer conducted where they wrote a piece for The Conversation, which is sort of a public-facing academic space about this letter and about its significance. Very excitingly, just a couple years ago, Dr. Donaldson traveled to Dr. Gaither's home and was able to both conduct an oral history with him and have him read a copy of this letter. So what I'm going to do to sort of conclude is play Dr. Gaither reading this letter. I want to say just a couple things though before I play that and let Dr. Gaither sort of take us out, which is that when Gaither was released from prison in York County, he continued to be extremely active in the civil rights movement, including being one of the leaders and organizers of the Freedom Rides. And he later became a biologist and professor at Slippery Rock University in Pennsylvania. So I'm going to play just about 3 minutes
Okay, this is from the York County Prison, February 23rd, 1961. Dear Mrs. Spearman, it was indeed a pleasure to receive and read your very encouraging letter of February the 22nd. Our hearts were lifted. I also applaud and laud the concern you and many other Americans have shown for us as we have been imprisoned here, and moreover for the cause for which we suffer. As we view the obvious losses that our nation is suffering, both at home and abroad, the call to action proves us to suffer so that one day America will truly be, not in word, but in deed, the land of the free and the home of the brave. We need every ounce of potential talent in our nation developed today in order to combat the rapid advances in all areas of the USSR. Ugly, distasteful, and irrational attitudes as displayed here in South Carolina and all over the Confederate South are suppressing justice and the glowing opportunity for America to become again the leader of the world. As you might surmise from the tone of this letter, I am presently in deep contemplation as to just what our nation and our particular region of the nation prizes most. Our religion, for the most part, is sheer hypocrisy, for if we love God and the Christian way of life, we can hate no man, no matter how black he is or how white he is. Interpreting the actions of the students in the South, I must say that we are not striving not to make headlines in the newspaper are to put any store out of business, but to save a lost nation whose founders and Christian heritage have historically emphasized the rights of man, predicated on unbiasedness and equality. It seems to me that there needs to be a tremendous amount of effort on the part of good Americans like you and the SCHRC to educate our fellow South Carolinians as to what the present movement is about and why our ultimate choice is desegregation, not disintegration. Prison life is really tough. We came out of solitary confinement a few days ago. 2 of our 11 imprisoned here are still in confinement. Christ's road to the cross, marking the most important journey in history, was not easy. So why should ours be less? We're not allowed to have books here in the prison, but
So he goes on to talk about what they're not allowed to have in the prison, what they might be allowed to have, like could you send them magazines, for example. So, sorry, I went to the wrong slide. So I wanted to conclude talking about this letter by sharing that this collection, the South Carolina Council on Human Relations collection, has been fully digitized with has been digitized with the help of digital collections here at the university and a grant from CLEAR, the Council on Library and Information Resources, as well as support from the Center for Civil Rights History and Research. So if you would like to visit this collection, you can scan this QR code and go check it out yourself. And it is now fully available online for other people to make exciting discoveries like this and hopefully make these connections continue. All right, so that is the end of our presentations for this afternoon, but we wanted to open it up to questions from anyone about any of these brief presentations this afternoon. And if you'd like, you can leave your questions in the chat where I will try and take a look at them. But if you would like to unmute and ask a question, feel free as well.
I have a question if you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
All right. Who has used these are awesome collections, right? And I imagine first they're kind of getting fed into students and classes. Have they been kind of consulted by researchers yet? And do we see them like appearing in publications? I mean, it's usually kind of the way collections first get used, students, grad students, then word gets out. But um,
Yeah, so it depends, I'll say, on the collection. So some of these collections are still being processed,
mhm.
so they have not been fully made available to researchers. So, for example, the Kershaw Collection and Harry Wright's collection don't have full finding aids yet, so they're not really in use by researchers yet. The yearbooks, the Roberts collection, the Council on Human Relations collection certainly have been used by researchers, right? The Roberts collection's been used for decades now by
Yeah,
researchers. Rachel's got, I think, the
the
second
book.
edition of the book.
Yeah.
Um, and but it is brand new or very new that these are digitized collections. So we're hopeful that the digitization or that the Roberts collection and the South Carolina Council on Human Relations are digitized collections. And we're hopeful that the digitization will make them even more accessible to researchers.
And I could say too, Matt. So when we think of the recent works of Claudia Smith Brinson, Carolyn Click's book on George Elmore, a lot of the
Oh
research
yeah.
is drawn from these collections, some of which were digitized. Kevin Sack has a new book out on Mother Emanuel, and he consulted our records quite closely. And in a few weeks, the Pulitzer Prize winner Etta Fields Black will
Oh
be
yeah.
in Carolina. And we didn't talk about collections related to her work today, but she has gone on record to say that book would not have been possible without the archival collections of the South Carolina Library.
Mhm. That's great.
Thanks, Matt. Other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Will you hire me and I'll work for free?
Oh, that's a Dr. Donaldson
You
question, I
guys just
think.
have the best job ever, ever. This has just been absolutely wonderful.
Well, Cheryl, since I'm biased and since you found a picture of me from 43 years ago, we can negotiate.
Okay, okay. Okay, I had a couple sort of nitty-gritty questions. When you get all this stuff, so these various collections that you've talked about, um, is the goal to digitize everything, or do you make some, I mean, you make some decisions, these are the really important things, or these are the things, you know what I'm saying? I'm just the sort of behind the scenes stuff.
Dr. Donaldson, do you want to answer that or you want me to?
So, yeah, I mean, for the main
Yeah.
question is the goal to digitize everything you possibly can? And then I guess the secondary question is, do you have to make, when you get, let's say somebody brings 47 boxes, you go through it and then make decisions.
Well, I think accessibility is always the goal. And I think if we know collections have significant research value or teaching value, then I think the ideal outcome is to have them available and digitized. We as a center don't always make those decisions. We can advocate and identify funding, but I know Katie Hoskins is on this call today, who works in our digital collection. So I think there is a process by which our special collections team kind of reviews collections and make a decision about the digitalization and also just the process. I mean, these things cannot happen overnight. And so thinking through what is the labor needed and the funding needed to make these possible. There have been some collections where they've been available for 30 plus years, but accessible
Ah,
very, very recently.
yeah. And then you've mentioned many times the Caroliniana Library. Is that the main, do you have your own holdings and that's another one? And then are there other um, archival homes for these collections?
So the center is a pass through. I mean, things come through us. We help identify materials. We do some of the preliminary processing, but ultimately, these collections will live and be housed in our special collections libraries. That includes our rare books library, the South Carolina Library, what is called the South Carolina Political or Modern Political Collections Library. We have an oral history library. And we also have another very important collection called the Moving Image Research Collection, which is all of our moving video footage.
Oh, cool.
And then I'll say, Cheryl, the university is just one of a number of archival resources across the state and in Columbia. And I noted earlier that Margaret Dunlap, who's with us today, we have a very strong partnership with the Richland Library in their local reading room. And they too are a repository for items related to civil rights and African-American history.
That's wonderful. All right, then I'll one more just question about someone who was mentioned, Richard Roberts. Was he a commercial photographer or was he more a historian?
He was a studio photographer mostly.
Okay.
So the Roberts collection, which I didn't talk as much, I talked about a few of the pictures. I didn't talk so much about the collection. There's nearly 6,000 photographs in that collection that we have.
Okay.
He was a studio photographer, mostly did portrait photography, but also photographed graduations, weddings, funerals, businesses. Some of his pictures were featured in newspapers, in ads. Sometimes they were just in newspaper stories, mostly the Palmetto Leader, but also at least one of his pictures was in the state newspaper as well. So he was a studio photographer.
Gotcha. All right. Well, this has been wonderful and very wonderful to hear from your graduate students. Their projects sound amazing, and I'm just so glad they have this opportunity. So thank you all. This has just been wonderful.
Thank you. I was also going to add about Roberts that he was a postal worker, like Rachel mentioned, and he would do his postal rounds in the morning or do his postal work in the morning until about noon and then take photographs in the afternoon and evening. So photography wasn't even really his full-time job.
Well, one of the things I'd like to say is that, as always, I enjoy these presentations. I really appreciated the presentation for which is my sorority sister, Wilhelmina Kershaw and Linda Kershaw, the both of them. And Sarah Kershaw, of course, was the president of the Columbia SC Alumni Chapter, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority. And about 2 months ago, I got was given 2 boxes of Sarah Kershaw's information. And some of it now I know I can give to you because it is not something that we need as far as I'm the historian for our chapter, so that's not something that we need for the chapter's information, but since you all have her collection now, I know I can give that to Dr. Donaldson. And so I was really happy to see somewhere I can, give the information that I have. And as always, I appreciate the information on Wheeler Hill. As you see, I posted our family home, which is on Wheeler Hill, and having looked at the Joseph Winter photographs, that part of Wheeler Hill that he did, that street, most of those people, as a little girl, I knew in those houses. But I always have to show our family home. And I think really, I'm really fortunate that he took that picture so that we will always have it, but that we had that property since because I'm doing our family's research since the late 1800s. So I really always appreciate anything that you all present. I think it's just wonderful. And thank you very much.
My name is Dean Slade, and I worked with Dr. Stuart Hamilton on the planning and the building of the Waverly Medical Building on the corner of Lady and Harden Street, and did a little bit of research because we had to buy up bits of property around the building, and one of the projects we were working on was the closing of Brayton Alley, and we didn't realize how much that would stir up in people, and so Councilman Cromartie disapproved of the closing, so we eventually kept the Brayton Alley open, even though it kind of cut the property in half. And other things that I found of interest while I was doing research around this was that the city of Columbia actually ended at Hardin Street, is that the Waverly community was actually not, not part of the city, which I found interesting. And I guess, as I've got to know more, less surprising. But I've really enjoyed being able to study African American history here in Columbia, and to work with folks that have a real interest in surviving and keeping personal histories alive.
Dean, thank you. One of the books I would recommend you explore is called The Garretts of Columbia by David Nicholson. David is a retired Washington Post reporter who used our collections, and David's family property is part of the property you all acquired to build the clinic. And they lived on Lady Street, and their property went from Lady to Gervais Street.
This is Ayana. If there's time, I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead, Ayana.
Hi. So I think a couple of years ago, maybe last year, I am down in Charleston did a community day where they were able to bring in their own kind of archival material and have it scanned, and they have a digital copy of that. Has there been any talks of USC doing something like that with the surrounding area where community members can bring in their material, and maybe it's something that they didn't know that was significant, and then it's something that the center can have, South Carolina Library can have, and then they have their own digital copy of?
Yeah, I'd say, Ayana, we've had a lot of conversation about that. Um, and obviously we're working with, community members in many different ways to bring in items. Um, it's something I think we're definitely interested in exploring more of in the future. But yeah, I think exactly what you're saying, it would be a really great way to have people, especially if they don't have like a huge collection, or just a few things to 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 have those items in a new way. Yeah.
And I think, Ayana, it's time to do it again. It has happened before, some years ago.
Mhm.
Community Day project led to the installation of the Booker T. Washington High School auditorium exhibit. It led to an exhibit at the Palmetto Compress Building about Ward 1. We've worked in years past with Historic Columbia on a Community Day project, and also with the Richland Library. Again, that was many years ago. So to Dr. Jill's point, it's time to do it again. And we'll reach out to the South Carolina African American Heritage Commission as a partner.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll volunteer. I will, at least.
Thank you all so much for joining us. I'm just going to check the chat real quick. Great. Thank you all so much for joining us. Before you leave, I want to give you a couple reminders or maybe new information for you. The items from these exhibits, or sorry, from these collections are used not just by researchers and students, but also in our exhibits. So one of those exhibits that you can visit right now is called Health, Rights, and Resistance. It is in the Hollings Library, which is sort of at the back of Thomas Cooper Library. And it is an entirely archival collection or exhibit using things from the university's collections, as well as some items on loan from the South Carolina State Museum. Another place where you can see some of the items that were talked about today, especially the photographs of Richard Samuel Roberts, is the Intersection exhibit. The Intersection exhibit is at the Columbia Museum of Art, which is on Main Street. And there we highlight Black life in Columbia through the photos of Roberts, but also through the photographs of many other people and a lot of other work of the center. And then if you want to learn more about the work of the center or check out more of our projects, another place where we are always using archival material is on our websites. So I've got QR codes here for two of our websites, but also just the addresses below. Justice for All is our digital exhibit that covers the history of the civil rights movement, more concentrated, but an extremely archival digital exhibit about the Briggs versus Elliott case, which became one of the Brown versus Board cases in front of the Supreme Court. And this digital exhibit looks at the case from its beginnings in Clarendon County all the way through the repercussions that we feel from that today. So those are both other ways that you can always check out our information. And if you are not on our mailing list, please feel free to join us and feel free to be in contact at any point. Reach out if you have questions or things you'd like to share. We would love to hear more from you. So thank everyone for being here today. We really appreciate it. This is our last brown bag of the semester, but it's been a great semester getting to share the work of the center with folks. So thank you all for coming. Have a great day.